Hi,
Thanks a lot
everybody.
for coming.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
Yes. Okay, the floor is yours, please.
Okay, so hi, everybody. I'm Susan Walsh, the classification guru. If you don't know me, I'm a fixer of dirty data. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the dangers of dirty data. I specialise in spend data classification, so I work with a lot of financial data and procurement teams, and I'm going to show you some examples of experiences within my world, but that are also relevant to the wider data world. So to get things started, I'm going to show you a little video.
When you think of superheroes, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Men in tights? Women with superhuman strength? Capes? Lots of superheroes wear capes, but only one wears a coat. A data coat. By day, she's Susan Walsh, but when dirty data rears its ugly head, she becomes the classification guru. What are the classification guru superpowers? Consistency, organization, accuracy, and trust. With help from her good friend and trusty sidekick, the Data Whisperer.
Hi, Scott.
The classification guru wages war against dirty data, fighting her sworn enemies, misclassification, duplicate, and the typo data. It's the classification guru's job to clean up the mean streets of Excel City.
That was bang out of order.
So, when you're in Excel hell, don't let dirty data get you down. Call the classification guru. When you think of...
Nearly showed it again there. So that is me. I wanted to give you a little sense and feel of what my presentation style is like and what my general approach to talking about data is, which is I'm trying to make it more fun and more engaging for everybody. So hopefully you'll enjoy the next 30 minutes. So what am I going to talk about? Well, the first thing I'm going to tell you about is myself. I'm going to tell you why I'm here, why I'm qualified to talk to you, and how I've acquired the knowledge that I have. Then we're going to talk about what is dirty data and just clarify what that could be within your organization or the data set that you're working with. Then we're going to talk about the importance of data quality. So yeah, we all know everyone's got dirty data, but why is it important to tidy it up? And then we're going to talk about the consequences of when it's not tidied up and what can happen. And then finally, I am going to show you how to ensure that you can have your data accuracy. And I'm going to do that by also telling you and showing you how you can spot check your data. And I know that everyone uses a lot of different tools and software these days, so we're going to keep it as basic and simple as possible with a little bit of Excel. And then I'm going to summarize for you at the end. And if you're really lucky, you'll get to see another wee video as well. So let's start with a little bit about myself. Who am I? Who the hell is the classification guru? Where did I come from? And why am I talking to you today? Well, I didn't start off in procurement or data. In fact, I worked in sales for the first 10 years of my life in my 20s. I did things like telesales, I cold called by foot, I was a national account manager. I did all those things, and I was doing what I thought I should be doing rather than what I enjoyed. And I wasn't really sure what I enjoyed, but I knew that it wasn't that. So I did what everyone does when they're having a career crisis. I opened a shop, that's what everyone does, isn't it? So I had a women's clothes shop. It was a beautiful shop, beautiful clothes, but it absolutely failed because the people of Guildford were very brand snobbish and they preferred to shop and buy known brands. So I had done a lot of market research, but failed on that aspect. So at that point, I was really desperate for some work and I was willing to do anything. And I found an ad on Gumtree, which is an online platform, and it was for data entry, data classification work. And I'd never done it before, but I thought, yeah, I'll give it a try. I've worked in business. I think I know what they're spending their money on, so let's try it. And I found that when I went to work for the spend analytics company, I took to it straight away. I loved what I was doing. It didn't feel like work. And I was really quick at it and accurate. So yeah, it was really great. And over the course of 5 years at that company, I helped to grow a team. I had 14 people that I was managing at the end. So, you know, I've trained people. I know how hard it is to get everybody to work to the same standards. It's, you know, classification itself is very subjective. So, you know, you can have more than one right answer. So from that came the classification guru. And I called it that name because I think that I am pretty much an expert in the spend data classification world, and I challenge anyone to beat me on that. So that's a little bit about my history. The things that I'm going to talk to you today are things that I come up with on a day-to-day basis within data. I see it all the time. You're going to nod your head in agreement with a lot of things I'm going to tell you, because you will see it all the time too. And hopefully I'm going to share with you some tips and some knowledge to help improve that situation. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty. What is dirty data? Well, you know, it's not just one thing. It can be a number of different things. So first of all, it can be things like misspelled words. So I work a lot with travel data. The number of times I see things like mileage or travel misspelled is unbelievable, or even things like maintenance services and screws, nuts and bolts. I mean, you don't think that that's something that could be misspelled, but trust me, it can be. So we've got things like that going on. We've also got things like incorrect descriptions. So what if someone has input the wrong information into a column, or it's a bad merge where you've pulled something through and the VLOOKUP has gone wrong? This can be really catastrophic depending on the area that you're working in, and or it could look incorrect but actually is referring to something, and I'll show you an example of what I mean by that shortly. Then we've got things like missing product codes or codes for any kind of, you know, supplier codes, things like that. It happens a lot, or you know, someone just adds something quickly. They don't really think about the consequences of not adding a code, and then it causes duplicates, multiple versions of the same item, maybe named slightly differently. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about there. As well as things like data in the wrong columns. So especially with addresses, you know, you've got your city and your postcode column, or your postcode in the town column, or you've got the whole address in one cell, but then the next line, the address is split over 3 columns. It can be really messy, really unstructured, really untidy. You know, half of it could have commas to separate the address and half might not. So it can be really unstandardized and messy. And then something that can cause quite a big problem is no standard units of measure. So over in Europe, you know, we're spelling litres R-E-S at the end, but it's E-R-S in the US. So have you got litre or litres? Have you got the singular or the plural version? Or maybe you've abbreviated it to LTR or LTRS, or maybe you've shortened it down to just L. And then things like, have you got 2 litres or 2 space litres or without a space? All those things can end up with multiple versions of the same items within a data file. So it's really good to agree how you're going to approach that situation. And then you can have things like currency issues. So I quite often work with multiple countries. I'm quite fortunate that a lot of the time my clients give me the currency conversions, but when they don't, it can be really tricky. So you have to just be aware of those issues as well. And then formatting. So this can be a real problem, even for things like VLOOKUPs. I have found so many times in Excel, and I'm not the biggest fan, I have to say, that I have the perfect VLOOKUP and it doesn't work. And all I need to do is change the column from general to text back to general, and lo and behold, it works again. I don't even know why that happens, but it happens quite a lot to me. Dates are another problem. Are we talking about UK European dates, or is it the US version? So you really need to know where your data is coming from. So that's why context is really important. You should never really look at a single column or a single row on its own. You should look at the data as a whole to get the full picture of what's going on. because you might see that in one of the columns, the country is the US or Europe, and so that will help guide you with your decision. And then you have to decide which standard you're going to go with. And then finally, it's our favorite, it's the duplicates. So they are in every single data file. They always happen, hard to stop, but I'm going to show you some tricks how to manage it. You know, I don't know that there's a way we could ever stop that, but we can certainly minimize it, and it can cause all kinds of problems. I know that you could end up with a customer and you've got half their information in one record and half in the other, and you need to try and merge them, and it's really tricky. So that is my definitions of dirty data. What that looks like to me in the classification world can be a bit different and a bit interesting, actually. I do really enjoy classification, so it can tell you a lot of things. So for example, here's LinkedIn, and the description was restaurant, so it was classified as a restaurant, but actually we all know that LinkedIn is a platform, so it's used for advertising, for recruitment, for training. So it's probably going to be related to that in some way. So again, it's really important to look at your data as a whole and in context. Then we have thermal installations. So this was just a quick skim of the eye. Someone had misread it as thermal insulation. So it's really important to read thoroughly your data, and also, again, look at the different columns for the descriptions. Then we've got joke technology. So this one was a bit of a tricky one for me. It was a client here in the UK, but the joke technology is based in Germany. And every time I did a Google search, I was getting party hats and fancy dress, and it wasn't really relevant to this. And the word technology made me understand that this probably wasn't party hats and outfits. So I did a Google search with joke technology Germany, and then found that it was actually a manufacturing components and supply company. So again, it's in my job, there's a lot of kind of investigative work and a bit of digging, and so yeah, it's really I find it really enjoyable. And then here's my favorite. I love talking about this one because I never get tired of being surprised by it. It's Tinder Corporation. So not the Tinder Corporation, swipe left or right. It's an IT services company based in the UK. And this serves as a really good purpose to show that you should never just assume that you know what something is in the data set. Always check, you know, and check again context, look at other columns. Does the data line up with what it's saying? And in this case, it didn't. So, you know, the description was additional data cabling. So that gave me a huge hint that it wasn't the Tinder. The other thing was my client was a charity. So I knew that there's no way that they would be buying services from Tinder, not even for advertising. So that's some examples. And, you know, it's really easy for me to sit here and show you line by line, you know, oh, look what's wrong. But when you're looking at a massive data set and it's just rows and rows and rows and rows, it's really hard to spot these things. So I'm going to show you some tips and tricks towards the end of this session as to how you can check your own data for these things. So if you are classifying data or something related, how can you manage this to improve the quality of the data? Well, the first thing is you really do have to look at the supplier name, the vendor name, and any descriptions, GL codes. I would warn you that with GL codes, they come from finance and they can be pretty unreliable. So I would always just be cautious with those. And then think about, is the company that you're working for really going to be buying this product or service from this company? The Tinder example is great, you know, or even LinkedIn, you know, would LinkedIn be offering us a restaurant service? I don't think so. So, you know, think about it like that. And values can really help with classification too. So if I have a hotel and it's a £10,000 or euro spend line, chances are that's probably going to be more for a venue hire than an accommodation cost. So there's little things that can help you and guide you with the classification. And I'm sure it's the same with other data as well. You'll have like quantities, if you're working with manufacturing parts or something. You know, if you know the data quite well, then you'll know if there's 1 0 too many or 1 0 too few. And then have a think about when you Google the company, does the website match the product and description in your data file? And is your data file wrong, or do you need to do more digging within Google to find the right company? And then finally, check your new companies on Google. Do not assume that you think you know what something is. And it might be a Google, it might even be a part or something like that. You know, in MRO, there's certain like parts that look like maybe screws, but they're actually not screws, they're something else. So double check those things. And it's the same with supplier normalization. Be really thorough and don't just assume you know what a company does. You know, I've been guilty of this in the past. Grainger is in the US and the UK, but they're two very different companies. So have a look and have a think, look at the descriptions, and if they're not the same, then that's telling you that something is wrong. And, you know, it's the same with normalizing. You know, don't assume that you know what the company does. Use the suffixes at the end of the company name to guide you as to what country they might be from. That can help you a lot. Think about where is the supplier located. Would they be supplying that service from that location? And that's that really. I want to really talk to you now about the importance of data quality. So why is it important? Why is it important to you? Why is it important to your business? Well, first of all, you're going to save time fixing dirty data. And I know that you guys probably spend a lot of time like having to fix or amend or patch data over because it's not quite right. And that's also costly. So that's costly of your time, that's costly of your salary. It could be costly to the business because something else is being sacrificed. So there are a lot of reasons why it's really important to have that data quality right. And then, you know, that dirty data could affect your decision-making processes. Are we making our budget decisions based on this data? Well, what if it's wrong? You know, what if we decide to reduce our headcount based on the wrong information? You know, what if we take the company in the wrong direction based on the information that we had that was wrong? So it can really affect not just your job, but the wider organization. And it does literally affect the whole organization, from sales to marketing to finance to procurement to planning, production, forecasting. The whole is a chain effect. And dirty data is going to make your life more difficult. You already know that. I don't need to tell you that, but it's a really good reason to have data quality. So what about the consequences? You know, because you see the messy bit, but actually, what's the chain reaction of that? How does that affect the business? Well, it affects it in a number of different ways. For example, within reporting and decision making. So if you're trying to make cost savings, if you don't have full visibility on how much you are spending with XYZ supplier, you can't negotiate better rates. If you are looking at buying things in for raw materials, well, you know, the production planner needs to know exactly what they need so that you can then buy the right amount and negotiate the best rate. Which is back again to supplier negotiations. You know, have you spent enough with us this year? If your suppliers aren't normalized, then you might not have the right number. And supplier rationalization, you probably have less suppliers than you think you do. So I recently did a project with a client. They had 43,000 suppliers and I normalized that down to 34,000. So nearly 10,000 versions of the same supplier, just duplicated or near duplicated in some way. It's going to affect things like forecasting too. And your budgets, we talked about that. You know, sales and marketing, I've worked in organizations where they often swap each other's budgets. So, you know, you want to make sure you have a true picture of what's going on within each department. And a really great example to show you on normalization again is this is something that typically shows up in a lot of data that I work with. So you will see a number of different suppliers here, but actually there's only a few because they've all got like different names and different suffixes at the end. So you might be making a decision here and thinking that you are spending 75k with PwC. You might not realize that there's other PwC within your file. When you normalize that, that 75k becomes 190k. Now that's a huge difference in the amount of money that you think you might be spending with them, or you actually are spending. And you can do this with not just suppliers, but products. You could categorize them in the same way. You know, there's a number of different ways you can use categorization to show this kind of information, which can really bring a lot of truth to your data. So if we just look at that side by side, you know, that's a lot less rows. Think about that in a massive file. That's a lot less rows for you to have to look at as well. So there are a lot of benefits there. And something else that it affects is data classification. So I am not joking when I tell you that I had IBM as a supplier and it had been classified as cleaning supplies, and it wasn't just one row, it was multiple rows. So for example, oh, I have jumped ahead of myself. We will go back to that. When you have dirty data in your technology implementation, data cleansing is often neglected. And I find that, and I don't know if you hear that quite a lot, but a lot of programs are implemented and then the project fails because the data's not right. It hadn't been cleaned before it had been implemented. The staff are complaining because nothing works and they don't trust the data. And these errors are only discovered post-implementation, way down the line. So you never really find out until it's way too late to be able to fix it, which means, you know, your staff are not going to be invested in it. They're going to claim it doesn't work. They're going to go back to the old ways. They're going to have multiple spreadsheets all over the place, and you're not going to be able to track your data. And it's going to cost you a lot of money to fix because you're probably going to have to unpick a lot of what you've done and redo the work. So you may have had to invest a little bit of money at the beginning of a project to clean your data, but it would have been a lot less than the cost that it's going to be to have to fix it afterwards. And then you're going to have to hope that once you have fixed it, your staff are going to readopt that technology because they may be mistrustful of it now. And I have heard of cases where projects are abandoned because people just don't trust the data anymore. And that can cost millions of pounds or dollars or euros that are just lost. And another area that dirty data and the consequences can be quite catastrophic is in AI, machine learning and automation. So data has to be cleansed and prepared beforehand. You know, I am preaching to the converted when I tell you that AI learns from training data sets. But if you don't clean those training data sets before they go in, it's going to cause a terrible, terrible mess. And I've seen this within spend data classification. It can get confused if you are not consistent with your training sets as well. You know, it needs lots of training sets. They all have to be right. If you start to have right and wrong training sets, it's going to confuse the AI. And, you know, machine learning too is instructive information based on coding and rules, but someone's looking at the data to pick those rules and coding out. If they're looking at dirty data, wrong data, that's what's going to go into the coding. So you have to be really careful and thorough and get that data set clean before you start. And it's the old adage, it's true what they say, it's rubbish in and rubbish out. It really does come and hit you on the head or bite you on the backside sometimes. So how can you ensure your data accuracy then? You know, all these things could go wrong. It could be an absolute disaster. How can we help minimize that? Well, first of all, you have to know that there is no quick fix. There is no magic button. There is no software in the world that is going to magically fix your data for you. You do have to put a bit of effort in. New unseen data really does need to be reviewed by a person, a human. someone with a pair of real eyes, and preferably someone who's experienced in the area of that data as well. That really helps. And you have to get the whole organization involved, because most of the data problems come at the point of data entry. And it's quite often not a data person that's inputting that information. It's the receptionist, or it's someone in planning or forecasting. So getting them involved and getting them to understand that they're responsible for the data too, and that by them not doing their job properly, their friend in another department could spend 2 hours trying to fix something, means that you are more likely for people to be a bit more careful when they're actually inputting the data. And those common terms and standards. So, what is a customer? What is a supplier? Because in different departments within an organization, that could be different things. So have really clearly defined terms and standards, and your units of measure again. How are you going to record those and make sure everyone's doing it? And then we haven't touched on this yet, but it is so important to maintain your data. You can't just fix it and leave it. Otherwise, I'm going to be back in a year to tell you that your data is a mess again, and it's going to cost you to fix it. You have to look at it regularly. Depending on the size of the data that you're dealing with, I would recommend monthly or quarterly. And by doing that, it also helps to get you familiar with your data. So suddenly, if you're seeing it all the time, when something isn't quite right, it stands out really quickly. And I get this all the time when I'm classifying data. After spending a few hours, I can see trends, patterns within the data. And when something isn't quite right, like a value, say, it really stands out. And then finally, spot check regularly. So just because it's being classified and is right at the point of classification doesn't mean it's going to be right in 2-3 months' time. People accidentally delete things, people cut and paste things, people overwrite things, people have their own opinion about what things should be. So it's really good to just go back, not necessarily often, but occasionally, and just do spot checks on your data to make sure everything's looking okay. And I'll give you some tips on that in a bit as well. So the best way that I can tell you to make sure that you get some really great data accuracy is by making sure your data has its coat on. And what I mean by that is it should be consistent. So again, it's those standard terms, units of measure, all those agreed things. You have to make sure that everybody's working to the same method. And in classification, I always say, because there's more than one right answer, it's better to have everything consistently the same, because even if it's consistently wrong, it's so easy to block change something if it's all the same, rather than having mixed classifications. So it just makes your life easier. Then it really needs to be organized. So think about a wardrobe and you've got lots of clothes in there and you want something, but you can't find it because it's in the back. If you had your wardrobe organized neatly by different types of clothes, you could just go in, pull it out and get what you need. Data is very much the same. So, categorize it by country, by region, by division, by business owner, by department, like sales, marketing, finance, etc. And then you can just pull out the bits of data that you need much faster than if you have just a whole big sheet and you don't know where to start. And of course, it has to be accurate. But accurate data, I mean, realistically, there is no such thing as 100% accurate data, unless, or there is, but it's only like that for a minute or two, and then people get their hands on it and it starts to fall apart. So you have to get it as accurate as possible. And for some businesses, I've heard the terms fit for purpose. So you have to decide what is accurate to you, and work with that. And once you have those three things, you then have trustworthy data. So that means you can make better business decisions. You know that the decisions you're making are the right ones for your team, for your business, for your budgets. It's going to make you have a more efficient business. So I did tell you that I was going to talk to you about some cheeky spot checks. I am going to show you in Excel. I'm going to tell you now, it's not the easiest way to do it, but it is possible. So this is a data classification example. I have set up a pivot table with the supplier name and the different levels of classification. what I need to do is the table doesn't look great. So I need to set it up in a tabular form so that it's supplier name and then descriptions. You could have product code and descriptions. It would work in the same way. And then you can't see it because it's kind of zoomed out, but this specific supplier is a catering supplier, but they have some transport information there that has been classified. So I can see straight away that that doesn't look right. So what I can do is, rather than flip back and forward with my tabs, I like to click on a new window, select arrange all, and then depending on the type of data, either have it vertically or horizontally. And then you can have your two data sets, pivot table in one and your raw data in the other. You can start to scroll down the different suppliers or whatever it is you're looking at, and then start to fix that information in the raw data. And once you do that, you can then go back to your pivot table and refresh the pivot table, which means you're not consistently going over all the same wrong data again and again and again. And so, you know, in theory, that list should get smaller and smaller and smaller. Or hopefully you don't have that many things that are wrong, so then you wouldn't have a problem. So that's like a really quick and easy way to do some spot checks in your data. Like I say, you know, it could be that you have multiple descriptions against one product code or SKU, so that would show up in the pivot. Or it could be, I don't know, something is assigned to sales and marketing that is for finance and it shows up in the pivot. So that's basically a really quick way of just spot checking your data. You know, you can do things like search for keywords like hotels, taxis, and make sure that things are classified as hotels and taxis. I mean, if they're wrong, then that's a really big flag that your whole data set is needing looked at. Because it's Excel, it doesn't necessarily handle big data awfully well. So if you do have a lot of data and you don't have other tools, you could take like a supplier out, paste it into a new separate Excel sheet. You could do your pivot just on that supplier using exactly the same methods, and you would then be able to look through. And then you could just merge back anything. And you could either do that on a VLOOKUP, or you could set an ID that you could merge back on. So that is a whistle-stop tour of what is dirty data. I am going to quickly tell you what I've told you already, and that is that accurate data is critical, and there are no shortcuts. I'm sorry, there's just none. You have to put the hard work in. You have to know your data. So check it regularly. Like I said, if you can start to spot things that don't look right, and then maintain it. So, you know, keep going, keep doing that. It's going to make your life easier. Give you some of that time back to do all the other things you have to do. And then don't forget, make sure your data has its coat on. And if you don't remember that, here's something that might help.
Are you leaving your data out in the cold? You wouldn't go out into sub-zero temperatures without the correct protection. So why do so many companies forget to protect their data? Unprotected data can lead to bad business decisions that cost money and put jobs at risk. That's why your data needs its coat on. This means making sure your data is consistent, organized, accurate, and trustworthy. Consistent means using the same standards, terms, and classifications company-wide. Organized data makes it easier to find. Think of it like a messy closet. It can be difficult to find what you're after, even when you know it's in there. When organized correctly, it becomes easier to find what we want. Data should be accurate, which can mean different things to different people, but at its most basic level, accurate data is correct. And finally, data should be trustworthy. This is critical. If your team can't trust the data, they might not use it. And business decisions around jobs, staffing, and budgets are all based on data, so it's got to be right. Like any code, there are differences in the quality of data services out there. If you buy a cheat code, it might not be waterproof or protect you enough, and it won't last more than one season. If you don't invest in good quality data services, you will end up paying twice as much, if not more in the long run, to fix the earlier mistakes. If you'd like to speak to an expert about data in your own business, visit theclassificationguru.com to find out more.
So that is me. Here are the different ways that you can get in touch with me. I tend to be on LinkedIn the most. I'm more than happy to connect with you. I hope that's been of interest to you, and I'm looking forward to hearing if there's any questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Just wanted to remind that if you want to ask a question, it's pinned in the chat section on YouTube. So just go there, click on Slider, and you can ask a question there. And in the meantime, I have a few questions. Yeah, let's say our data is quite big. So if the company is large, an internet company, yeah. So just I understand that there is no other way to ensure the quality of data other than going through this manually and then checking. But are there some methods that we can use when the data is simply too huge?
Yeah, so I use aggregation quite a lot. So I haven't mentioned it in my presentation. I use some software called Omniscope, and that's data modeling and visualization software. So I could be classifying 2-3 million rows of data. What I do is aggregate that down to unique supplier names and invoice descriptions. So again, if you've got 80,000, 100,000 products, you might be able to aggregate that down on product code or product description, something like that, to help make it more manageable. In terms of, there isn't automation, but I can semi-automate my refresh process. So once I've classified that first set of data for a client, if they want their data updated in, say, 3 months' time, I can take what I've classified already, I can match on the new data on either just supplier or supplier and description, and pull through anything that's been classified. So with some clients that I'm working for at the moment, that kind of covers off about 80% of the data. So, and the more you do that, the more you'll classify. So depending on if how much new data you're getting in each month or quarter, you can really make the process efficient. And because you've classified it at the start, and because you're maintaining it, it's going to be right.
Okay. Yeah. So still a lot of hard work and looking at this. Then there is no other way, right?
Well, it depends. You call it hard work, I call it fun.
Okay. Yeah. So like the definition of fun is different for everyone.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay. And yeah, I was wondering, so like when you showed examples of dirty data and this example with PwC, like
Yeah.
written in so many different forms. So I have to experience that so often. And yeah, so I don't know if there is a good solution for that. Like how do we, other than just manually look at this and see, okay, this
I
must,
know. And
how do
well,
we?
you would think after all this time that someone would have developed something.
Mm-hmm.
But no, because there are so many different ways that it can show up. Mm-hmm. What I have is a master normalization file. Okay. So again, like the classification, anything that I've seen before can be mapped over, and then anything new just gets added. Because of the way Omniscope is, it's quite therapeutic to go through and take rid of all the inks and the SPZOOs and the GmbHs and go through and tidy up. But yeah, you would have thought that by now there would be a tool out there that would just be able to do that, but I haven't seen anything.
Okay.
And even like open source, I don't think there's because you need everyone has different data. So all my clients are in different industries. So every time I start with a new client, it is a new data set. So there's new challenges. So you would need to pull so much data together to form this like global master file. I'm not sure that people are potentially willing to share that information.
It's too much work to put this together, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically for you, the process, like let's say you're starting with a new client and you get this dump of data, and then you see these sort of problems like PwC written in so many different forms. So just correct me if I'm wrong. I want to make sure I understood correctly. So you just get all the suppliers, and then one by one, you kind of come with this a canonical name for each, right? For each supplier, and then you have this mapping.
Well, yeah. So, yeah. So I'm not literally going through line by line. So
Okay.
so the way that I can do searches in my data in my software, I can look for ink full stop, for example, and that will bring up every single supplier that has the ink full stop. And the great thing about this Omniscope is, unlike Excel, when you have a filter on, when you delete or change things, it only changes the things that you've selected. So anything that is behind that doesn't get affected. So I'm writing a book at the moment, and I'm just doing my chapter on normalization, and there's a process you have to follow. So for example, you can't remove the inks first. You have to remove the ink full stop first, or comma space ink and then ink, because if you remove ink first, you're left with a comma and a full stop just floating in the data. So I guess a lot of people would find it a laborious process, but those 43,000 suppliers, they were pretty messy, and I managed that in about 5 days, so it wasn't too bad.
Okay. And yeah, well, I still like there's quite a lot of manual work. Is there any way to spot these problems in a more automated fashion, like in an
I
automatic way?
think in the spend data worlds, no, but I think there are definitely some great tools out there for data cleansing for things like addresses and names and data like that. I've seen like fuzzy matches and things like that on names, and it never works properly. The time it's taken to do the fuzzy matches and change them and check them, you might as well have started from scratch and done it. So that's my perception of it.
Yeah, indeed. So yeah, I have similar experience with fuzzy checking. So yeah, I thought maybe it's
And
just me.
also things like PwC, you've got PwC, but you've also got PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Yeah,
So,
that won't work.
yeah.
Okay, so you need to have this master table and somehow get it.
Yeah, and maybe it's just that you have to build it over time. There's I don't think there's a quick fix answer for any of this.
Yeah, right. And yeah, I know that at our company, so we have this BI department, and they actually maintaining these tables to make it possible to do this in automated, semi-automated way. So still there are errors slipping through this. This is still.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we don't have any more questions from the audience. I just want to remind that if you have any question, you click this link, pinned link, and ask. And there is a bit of delay. So when I say like the Zoom has like 10-15 seconds before before it goes to stream. So it might take some time for people to ask.
I have to say, I'm impressed that I managed to get some internet connection. So
yeah, that's
that's whew.
it's so while we're waiting for more questions, I'm curious about your background. So like when you showed at the beginning that you started in sales, that's an interesting, how to say, interesting career. I'm just wondering, like, to what extent this career, this experience in sales, helped you now to become
a lot, hugely. I don't think I would have this knowledge without the career in sales first, or just working in a large organization. I think when I have people coming to work for me, it tends not to be data analysts and data scientists that I need, but people who have very good attention to detail and that have worked in a corporate environment. They're the people that tend to be more accurate and more successful doing this job. So, but they're hard to find. But this is, it's also not the most glamorous of jobs. So I'm trying to bring a bit of glamour to it with my data den. So yeah, it's, you know, we're kind of like the bin people, the bin rubbish collectors of the data world. You know, it's everyone needs their rubbish collected. Nobody wants to do that job, but if we didn't have those rubbish collectors, society would fall apart probably. So it's the same with data cleansing, you know.
Okay.
It's nobody wants to do it. It's not glamorous. But the fantastic, you know, wonderful dashboards would not happen without the clean data, you know. The machine learning, the algorithms, that wouldn't happen without clean data. Well, they do happen, but the output wouldn't happen without clean data. So, you know, it's so important.
Yeah, we have an interesting question. So what does your day-to-day look like?
Oh, wow. I have so I've actually, it's so varied that I have a tool called Manic Time now that literally tracks everything I do, because in a 5-minute space, I could be on LinkedIn, I could be responding to an email, I could be classifying data. So in a day, I can be doing a talk or a podcast. You know, I've done both this week. I've done 2 talks and a podcast this week. I've created content for my different channels. I have I'm writing the book, so I'm trying to do some of that. I also have projects to run, and I've got a team that are working on projects too. So not only am I doing that, but I have to check their data to make sure that when, you know, that it's been classified correctly. So there's so much, but I love the variety. It's every day is different. And also, I'm actually moving a house tomorrow, so there's been a lot of packing involved at the moment as well. Outside of this little space, there is literally, it's just boxes everywhere.
Okay, that's something we don't see, right?
Yeah, you don't get to
a
see
nice
the
background.
yeah.
So how was I didn't catch the name of the tool. Do you say Manic Time?
Oh, it's so the productivity time tracking tool is Manic Time.
So it basically just watches what you do on your laptop, and then it just sees
everything. Like if we're on a Zoom now, when it lists it later, it'll have taken a screenshot of us talking, so I can remember whose Zoom I was on.
Oh wow, that's is it free?
Yeah, there is a free version. I've got the paid version, but there's also a free one.
That sounds very
but for me, it's
useful.
perfect.
Okay, I should give it a try.
Yeah.
So we, in the meantime, got 4 new questions. So you said that all team members should be involved in data
Oh
cleaning
wow.
and reviewing. Wouldn't it bring even more mess?
Not so much that they're involved in the cleaning, but well, they should be involved in data quality. So they should be putting in better quality data at the point of entry. That should save time. If it's done properly and you engage people and train them, then it should save time.
Okay, so you basically have to establish a certain process, like a certain playbook, and then it works well.
Yeah.
Okay. So then there is a question, if it's possible to get your slides. I assume the answer is yes.
Yeah, I can share them. Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, and then
it's a very large file. So I'll maybe take the videos out. But you can watch the videos on my YouTube channel, so that's fine.
Yeah, so we will just put the links to the description. Okay. Do you have any suggestions on how to do data cleaning in our organization? Carlotta is asking.
Do you know what her organization is?
No.
Okay, Carla, I probably do have a suggestion, but if you want to get in touch, I'll be happy to have a chat with you and see what challenges you might have.
Okay, yeah, so I'm not sure if you said this already because I arrived here a bit late. Which tools do you usually use?
Yeah, so it's called Omniscope from Visokio. So it's Visokio, visokio.com. I can share a link, that's fine. And there are two versions. There's a desktop-based version, and then there's a cloud-based version. So there's Classic and Evo. Classic I use for all my classification work, and Evo I use for all my visualization and modeling work. So yeah, they're both really helpful.
Like Excel, do you also use Excel? Or... No.
Sorry, I lost you there for a minute.
No, I was just asking if you also use Excel to do this
You know
kind of
what?
stuff.
So I think we over-engineer things sometimes. So yeah, I do use Excel. Sometimes putting some data in Excel and doing text to columns or something like that is the easiest thing to do. You know, we don't always need a formula and a big script, you know, to do something really simple. You know, sometimes a search and replace to get rid of commas is fine. You know, we don't always have to be, you know, doing fancy things. So yeah, I do. But it is so dangerous working with Excel because you can lose data, it can freeze, it can crash. You can, if you've got filters on and you start cutting and pasting things, then it ends up all over the place. So you have to be really careful. I mean, one of the great things about Omniscope is I can read only on specific columns. So I can edit these ones and freeze these ones. So if I accidentally paste, it won't let me. So it's really helpful.
Okay, so it's like I have never used this tool or seen it. It's like Excel on steroids, or
that's what I call it. Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly what I call it.
Okay.
It is.
Yeah, I use Google spreadsheets, Google Sheets. There, it's also like it's not as powerful as Excel, but like for many things, when like I work as a data scientist, and yeah, of course I can use pandas.
I think the most important thing is not the tool you use; it's the tool that's right for you.
Yeah.
So you know, you could be the best data scientist in the world, but if you don't work well in Excel, there's no, you know, work in Google Sheets instead. You know, it's not. Yeah, don't be pressured into using the tool that someone use the tool that works for you.
And Excel is great for simple tasks, like you said. Like you don't always need to go through all this complexity. You just open Excel and do simple like search and replace.
Yeah.
Okay, we do not have any more questions, which means I can set you free now. Thanks a lot.
You get a break? Do you get a break as well then?
Yes, I will get a break. Thanks a lot for coming, for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. So,
thanks so much.
Yeah, please send me slides and links to Omniscope and some other tools you mentioned, and I'll put them in the description.
Brilliant. Thanks very much.
Yeah,
have a great weekend.
Yes, thanks.
Bye.
So now we'll have goodbye. We'll have 10 minutes break. I don't know if Yelena joined already. No, she has not. So let me just share my screen. Okay, it seems I cannot share my screen, but anyways, so we have 7 minutes break, and as soon as Lena joins, yeah, in 7 minutes we will continue. So see you soon.